so sorry.
Season 3 of The White Lotus takes place in Thailand. It has everything. Financial fraud, Hansi brothers, a missing gun, best friends that hate each other, Lisa from Blackpink. So you cannot have a show about the tourism industrial complex that takes place in Thailand and not talk about the white men who go there to fetishize on Asian women. In the first episode, there was a sprinkle of a reference to it with one of the characters, Chloe, calling her boyfriend an LBH, a loser back home, referring to the dynamic of balding white guys having more power and privilege in Asia as compared to, well, back home in the West. I thought that was it, and I was kind of disappointed, not gonna lie. But then Mike White, the writer and creator of the show, came through with the most amazing monologue, at least the best monologue since my last situationship tried to convince me that I was the only one who got it all wrong. Pro tip, don't ever let a non-binary person break your heart, because you can't be like, oh, non-binary people are like this, the same way that you can be like, oh, men are trash and women are dramatic, because there's no gender essentialism. Like, what stereotype is there about non-binary people that can help me mend my broken heart? Like, they have cool hair? That's not very helpful! The monologue went like this. Rick, played by Walton Goggins, goes to a bar and meets with Frank, played by Sam Rockwell. At this bar, Frank orders some chamomile tea, and the follow-up question about sobriety leads to a roller coaster. Frank talks about moving to Thailand because he did nefarious things, but also because he has a fetish for Asian women. And how he first got to Thailand, he had heaps of casual sex, but then, and drugs, and, you know, lots of drinks. But then he starts to question his desire.
What is desire? The form of this cute Asian girl, why does it have such a grip on me? Because she's the opposite of me? Is she gonna complete me in some way? I realized I could fuck a million women, I'd still never be satisfied. Maybe what I really want is to be one of these Asian girls.
Really?
You know?
Not really.
No, really.
Really?
So, one night I took home some girl, turned out to be a lady boy, which I'd done before, but this time, instead of fucking the lady boy fucked me. And it was kind of magical. And I got in my head that what I really wanted was to be one of these Asian girls, getting fucked by me, and to feel that. So I put out an ad looking for a white guy, my age, come over and fuck me. Found a guy looked a lot like me. Then I put on some lingerie and perfume, made myself look like one of these girls, and I thought I looked pretty hot. And then this guy came over and railed the shit out of me. And then I got addicted to that. Some nights 3, 4 guys would come over and rail the shit out of me. Some I even had to pay. And at the same time, I'd hire an Asian girl to just sit there and watch the whole thing. I'd look in her eyes while some guy was fucking me, and I'd think, I am her, and I'm fucking me.
The reason why I like this monologue so much is that it addresses in just the most bonkers way that the chase after Asian women is not about an attraction to Asian women. It's about power and control. It's about completely taking over the identity of who you try to subjugate, which feels like the race equivalent to, in race relations, and I'm gonna use the C word here, late stage capitalism. I think that's why cases of like Rachel Dolezal and Pretendians are so fascinating, because you're like being racist, but in a very immersive way. And you even lie to yourself and say that it's out of honor and love for the people. Frank represents just countless of balding white men. I'm sorry, I should be nicer to people who are bald, okay? My dad's balding. I still love him. I'm being mean. let me apologize. I apologize to bald man. I'm so sorry, bald man. It's my fault. I should not be mean to you. Let me start over. Frank represents countless of white men, not bald necessarily, who go to Asia to fetishize on the girls there without an insight or understanding of historical context. But like, what if they did take a second to think about it? What if they became like an inch closer to understanding the power dynamics at play? But also, what if they were not close at all? You know, it's fantastic satire. They're cultural critics who are way more qualified to talk about like anything that I talk about in this video, but especially about the power dynamics of the monologue and the gender aspect of it all. So I'll link some things down below. There was a lot of fanfare for this monologue and some Emmy buzz, and I think one of the reasons why it hits so much is because we all know somebody like Frank, who is, frankly, too open about their fetish for Asian women. So I want to discuss why that is. Why do we all know somebody like that? Why do non-Asian men fetishize on Asian women? I want to talk about the history of the hypersexualization of Asian women and the stereotype that we are submissive. Me being me, who I am and what I'm qualified to talk about, I'm going to primarily focus on how this impacts East and Southeast Asian people, but I hope somebody else can take on the torch and talk about how this impacts South Asian people and Middle Eastern people as well. And because I live in the US, I'm going to focus on the history here, but I, welcome the expertise of people who live in other countries and how this stereotype plays out in your country. I'm a sucker for order and control. I'm definitely a Capricorn. We're going to be splitting this video essay into 3 parts. First, I'm going to get my thoughts out of the way because they're very unserious. Like, don't take anything, like, take it all lightly. And then we're going to talk about history and then the real life ramifications of these stereotypes. Obviously, stereotypes are bad. The stereotype that Asian women are hypersexual goes hand in hand with the stereotype that we're submissive because we're oh so willing to comply with the whims and desires of the white man. It shouldn't have to be said, but obviously not all Asian women are submissive. Yuriko Chiyama and Grace Lee Boggs are 2 examples of badass Asian ladies who did not take things lying down. They were activists and fighters. Okay, hear me out. This is my beef with stereotypes in general, okay? I hate the stereotypes themselves, but I also hate the pressure to like overcome the stereotype. Okay, don't get me wrong, okay? Don't get it twisted. Okay, I love seeing stories of Black excellence and Indigenous people winning. And I love seeing, Latinos and Asian people proving that they belong in this country. I love it. But I feel like you shouldn't have to like overcome stereotypes to be humanized. Your humanity is not based on you overcoming the narratives that are placed upon you. Your humanity is based on the fact that you are you and you exist and you're human, you have rights. What I mean is like doing an action to overcome the stereotype means that you're still being influenced by it. And this is not a critique on you, okay? This is a critique of stereotype and how both sides of the coin kind of suck. When it comes to the stereotype that Asian women are hypersexual and submissive, I have a complicated relationship with that. I, like most women, want to own my own body and feel sexy in it without feeling like it's for the gaze of other people. Not that I've ever like organically been called sexy. Like it's always, oh, cute. I'm not going to desexualize myself to prove a point, to make sure that others are not perceiving me a certain way. I'm gonna present myself the way that I want to be presented. Does that make sense? And if I wanna be a little submissive to a hot butch, let me be submissive without feeling like a traitor to my own race. God damn it! Like if you're lazy like me, that's okay. Rot away. You don't have to be working 24/7 for the man, If you're loud, like come on vocal range, like more people should be like as loud and speaking as loudly as you. If you don't know how to use spices, like amazing, good for you. You're like raw dogging food. Like that's pretty cool. Good for you. Not me. I'm not doing that, but good for you. Everything that I said is probably somehow problematic, but what I'm trying to say is you are not a stereotype. You are also not what you do to try to overcome the stereotypes that are placed upon you. You are you, and you're human, and I see you. If you paid attention in history class like I did because your self-worth was entirely dependent on your grades, then you might remember learning about the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. This is taught in US history classes as the first significant piece of legislation that banned immigrants. It was a 10-year ban on Chinese immigrants. However, even before the Chinese Exclusion Act, there was the Pager Act of 1875, which prohibited the entry of immigrants who were suspected of engaging in lewd or immoral behavior. It's not said in the language of the act, but as we all know, the way that the law is written is not how it is enforced. So this law was primarily used to exclude the migration of Chinese women under the suspicion that they're prostitutes. But it's bonkers, right? It's bonkers that codified into the law of this land was this connection between Asian women and sex work. I don't know about you, but I was completely taken aback to learn about this. This definitely goes on my top 10 list of disgusting law and legislation stuff, probably behind the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Okay, I hate to say it, but overturning Roe v. Wade was not even the most efficient way to get rid of abortions in this country. Because with the way that they're making the world hell on earth, we're not having sex. We're too depressed to be having sex, We're not making babies. A major contributor to the perception in the US that Asian women are sexually permissive was the proliferation of camp towns during the Korean War and similar arrangements in the Vietnam War. These camp towns were created or encouraged to flourish by the US military near the bases, and they served as entertainment centers to the GIs, including visits to brothels. But before we can talk about all that, we need to talk about the predecessor of the camp towns, which are the comfort stations. Before and during World War II, fascist and Imperial Japan coerced women and girls to serve as comfort women, which is an euphemism to victims of sexual military slavery and human trafficking. They served in comfort stations, which is a euphemism for rape centers to serve Japanese soldiers. The girls and women were kidnapped from Korea, the Philippines, Malaysia, China, East Timor, Taiwan, Netherlands, and Indonesia, and maybe other countries, but I haven't, these are the countries that I saw in my research. Specific estimates vary from 16,000 to 410,000 women and girls. They were kidnapped or lured under false pretenses of a job. Here's the thing. Rape has always happened in wars. What's chilling and gross about all of this was that this was systemic. I'm going to leave a resource below that delves more deeply into this issue. I want to know that there are demonstrations every Wednesday in Seoul in front of the Japanese embassy, demanding that Japan apologizes to the survivors of sexual military slavery. And this is the longest running demonstration in the world. The reason why it's important to talk about this is that when the US occupied Japan, they kept the comfort station going for a year. Japan coerced poor women into prostitution, the rationale being that this would stop American soldiers from raping virtuous women. It is suspected but not confirmed that this included women of other nationalities as well, meaning that the US completely turned a blind eye to Japan's war crimes. During the Cold War, the US kept a heavy military presence in Asia that still continues to this day. In Korea, camp towns were created and encouraged to flourish by the US Army to entertain American soldiers. This took on the regulated prostitution system that was created by Japan during World War II. It was so regulated, in fact, that the US asked the Korean government to employ routine STI checks. By 1965 in Korea, 85% of the GI surveyed reported they'd been with or gone out with a prostitute. 85%. In Vietnam during the war, there were brothels in the perimeters of the military base that were sanctioned by the US government. And then, of course, there were non-US sanctioned brothels that were still, a thing because there was high demand for it. By the end of the war in 1975, there was an estimate of 500,000 prostituted women. The White Lotus takes place in Thailand, so I want to talk about the sex industry there as well. Thailand became a rest and recreation center for the GIs, meaning a place where they could go on vacation. This led to a boom in the sex industry, which was encouraged by the Thai government and the US government as well. During this time in Thailand, prostitution increased 20-fold to what it was before US presence in Asia. Between 1966 and 1969, there was an estimate of 70,000 soldiers who spent their rest and recreation week off in Thailand. After the Vietnam War ended, there was a marketing campaign to continue the sex industry in Thailand, even though prostitution was technically illegal. To this day, the sex industry makes up 10% of Thailand's GDP, and 3/4 of tourists are white, single males. I want to be very clear, even though history books and even I talk about it as prostitution and sex work, Most of the women were coerced into this line of work because they were poor, they were orphaned, they were living in countries that were just recovering from colonialism and imperialism and occupation. It is not an inherent thing that Asian women likes to engage in sex work. When you look at the historical context, there's a reason for why there's such a large number of women who engage in this work. The point of all this history is, this was the image that a lot of soldiers were bringing back to the country. This was their only interaction with Asian women, and this is what they were bringing back to the country. This was also how the US military and government viewed Asian women, right? So when you look at all this history, it's no wonder that there's a connection between sex and Asian women in this country. I'll be honest with you, at this point in my research, I got so bored that I would have rather doom-scrolled into a descent into authoritarianism led by a man who thinks fascism means getting golden facials. Bringing back this old Trump lore. So anyways, I don't have much to talk about. A lot of the research that I read highlighted the opera Madame Butterfly as an early piece of media that contributed to the stereotype of Asian women being docile and submissive. As a quick synopsis, this Japanese girl named Chocho marries an American man and then gives birth to his son, and then kills herself when she realizes that the American man has no intention of ever marrying her. There was very limited representation of Asian women in the media, and the things that existed show people literally killing themselves because they couldn't live without a white man. It shows Asian women as being disposable and only for temporary pleasure. The opera, believe you not, is still performed. It is still performed, and it even inspired the musical Miss Saigon, which follows the same storyline but takes place during the Vietnam War, or as they say it in Vietnam, the American War. I'd actually be happy to put more research into this, like it could be another video, because I need to do other things other than doom scroll to our descent into corporate oligarchy led by a man who thinks that this truck is innovative. It's not even, okay, I love ugly cars, okay? But the Cybertruck, not a proper ugly car, okay? The PT Cruiser has a lot of charm. The Nissan Cube looks straight out of a Ghibli animation. This looks like it has no forehead, okay? It looks like it vapes Axe body spray. The notion that Asian women are hypersexual and submissive creates space for harassment. Because if you're sexually permissive, then you are always consenting. Not that men like that care about consent in the first place, but the point is this stereotype creates the illusion that Asian women are game for anything, which is not the truth. It's simply not the truth. We're not consenting to fulfill the white man's desire. No, ma'am. Okay, I'm gonna have to read this. So while reported rates of Asian Americans who experience non-rape sexual assault is lower than other ethnic groups, 31.9% being the average for Asian Americans and 43.9% being the national average, I truly hesitate to trust this number because studies have also found that Asian Americans face barriers in reporting assault, which is reflected in the low prevalence of help-seeking behaviors. With this specific surveys, there might have also been some language barriers because the survey was done through the telephone in only English and Spanish. They also were very limited in their numbers. Like there's no number for Asian women who survived a rape because the survey group was so low. This survey surprised me a lot because of the history that I outlined. The meta study that I read highlighted various reasons for why there's such a low prevalence of help-seeking behavior. One of the reasons could be mistrust in the authorities and relying on friends and family instead of formal systems, and also cultural shame and stigma relating to sex. There is some real work that needs to be done within our community to get rid of that stigma that prevents people from seeking help. But I also wonder if some of that mistrust of formal systems and shame and stigma that we feel also comes from the fear of reporting and then being seen as a stereotype, that we somehow permitted the men to harass us because we're so sexually permissive. I wonder if there's not a real fear that we will not be believed, not only because we're women, but because we're also Asian. And of course, I'm talking about this specifically about Asian women, but it's not an issue exclusive to Asian women. Like all women of color are hypersexualized in some way and face prejudices when they're trying to report something, right? Especially Black and Indigenous women. I'll link down some videos and other resources that I find. I'm highlighting about the hypersexualization of Asian women because one, that is what I an Asian woman am capable of talking about. And two, because there's also like a very insidious nature to it in this country because of the history that I outlined. I found this old study and I hope that it's very old. It's from 20 years ago and hopefully things have changed. I did not try to figure out if things have changed or not because of the nature of the study. In 2002, there was a study conducted by Jennifer Lingosette and Sarah Byrne. Look at me mispronouncing white people's name. Out of 31 pornographic websites that depicted rape or torture of women, more than half showed Asian women as the raped victim. I don't really... This is disgusting. Like, I don't have an analysis for this. It's just disgusting. It just shows that some people are okay with that. Okay, I'm coming back here because I actually do have something to say. At one point in time, there was a huge demand for pornographic media depicting Asian women being violated, which shows how normalized violence is against female-presenting Asian women. This is a legacy of the history that I talked about in this video. Sex is about power, and porn is all about fantasy. And what I imagine is appealing to people who watch those videos is the totality of the power in that scenario. There are some real sickos out there watching this type of shit, and I think it's targeted towards Asian women because we're seen in society as being easy to overpower. To me, it doesn't really matter if that percentage has changed in the 20 years that have passed, because what if it's less Asian women being depicted in rapes, then it's more Black women, it's more Latina women, it's more white women. Like, I think we all lose no matter what. My hope would be that the number of porn depicting violence has decreased overall, but you and I both know that's not the case. I guess this only encourages me to watch porn as ethically as possible. At worst, this stereotype can get us killed. In 2021, there was a mass shooting in Atlanta in 3 massage parlors that killed 8 people, 6 of whom were Asian women. The shooter said that he was a sex addict and he wanted to get rid of sexual temptations. Now, it does not matter to me whether or not the massage parlors were giving out, happy endings to the massages. What matters is that 8 people were killed. And you can't disconnect this statement from like the large number of Asian-woman massage parlors. Hi, I'm back again. I'll briefly talk about this because this kind of warrants its own video. But the idea that Asians are submissive, that will do as we're told, contributes to the model minority myth. English is absolutely not my first language, if you can't tell. This contributes to the white supremacist status quo. In other words, Asian people are propped up as model minorities, right? The minorities that are excelling by playing by the rules of white supremacy. And then we're pitted against other minorities, especially Black and brown people, who then get told that they're doing it wrong because look at those Orientals doing it right, playing by the rules. I don't want to contribute to that. And I think the idea that we are willing to do whatever under white supremacy contributes to that. Does that make sense? Maybe I'm misunderstanding something here. Finally, it's important to talk about the hypersexualization of Asian women because the way that we view Asian women reflects how we view Asia as a whole. There's a concept called Orientalism that was coined by Palestinian-American scholar Edward S. Said. He describes Orientalism as Western style for dominating, restructuring, and having authority over the Orient. It's seeing the East the way that the West wants to see it, not how it is, and then acting on the erroneous view to conquer. In my experience, the way that America views the East is infantilizing, right? We view the East as being feminine as compared to the strong and masculine West. The way that we view Asian women is exactly how we see the continent of Asia as a whole as weak and submissive, in need of saving. The objectification of Asian women also reflects how we see Asian people in general as less complex, as not holding nuances within ourselves. This is yet another reason why we need to correct our view of Asian women, not as hypersexual and submissive, but as kind and lazy and intelligent and depressed and bossy and anxious and wonderful and all the other multitudes that we hold within ourselves. In conclusion, I am lazy. I don't want to write a conclusion. If you have any questions, you can watch the video again or comment it and I'll Google it for you because I don't know shit. But for real, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate if you If you stuck around this long, I really, really appreciate your eyeballs and your attention spam. Please comment. You know, I would love some feedback on what I could improve on, what you enjoyed, if I should keep going at it. I would really like to know that. Okay, ciao, ciao.